Yay!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Train Sim World 2 Roadmap stream. I'm JD, and I am joined, as ever, by exec producer Matt Pedalston. Hello, Matt. How's it going? Oh, I'm looking the
Oh,
wrong way. There we go.
I'm very good. Thank you very much.
And we have, is it senior producer Adam, isn't it?
It is,
Senior
yes,
producer
senior
Adam.
producer.
Welcome to the stream tonight. Hope everybody at home is doing well. We hope you've managed to read through the behemoth of the roadmap today. It's quite a long one. It covers quite a lot of different subjects. Really recommend if you haven't read it yet to do so, whether it is during this live stream or afterwards, because there's lots and lots of interesting, exciting things in there that we're going to be talking a little bit more about in the live stream tonight. So we're going to try and cover all of the different talking points that we mentioned in the roadmap. So we've got some Spirit of Steam information for you. We've got a couple of screenshots and a nice teaser video for you, which we're going to show fairly soon. We have more information on the preservation crew updates, including a few things like a cheeky little Bakerloo timetable that we snuck into this month's roadmap. We're going to talk about the DBBR 187 console betas, PS5 DLC limit, Xbox Sound, and returning liveries on Xbox on Creators Club as well. We've also got a little section at the end which I'm going to call community question time, which it's probably a bit of a misnomer because we're going to be grabbing a couple of topics from the community that have seen a lot of traction over the course of the last month, and we're going to just discuss them in a little bit more open terms towards the end of the stream. So that's kind of what our itinerary is for the evening. Hope you're strapped in and have been able to at least have a glance over what we covered during the roadmap article. But should we start tonight with Spirit of Steam, Matt?
Yeah, let's do that.
Absolutely, that sounds good. And for those who have not noticed already, we have been cycling through some of the screenshots in the background. It's kind of a little bit like catchphrase, if anybody's watched that, where you've got the different bits that are obscured and you've got to try and guess what the full
Just
picture
remember,
is.
say what you see.
Say what you see. We're going to show you those screenshots in full in a second, and we've also got the teaser video as well. But Matt, before we do that, you want to give a quick update to everybody on where we are with Steam, and I suppose just a little status report would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been so much work going on. The route is basically finished at this point. The trains, certainly the train art is virtually finished at this point. And the wagons and the coaches. Gameplay is most of the way there now. Service mode is, as usual, the bit that comes in last. Scenarios have been done for a little while. They're just getting polishes and bug fixes at this point. And really, it's tuning the physics, tuning the experience. Audio is still going in some places. Particle effects are still being quite heavily tuned actually at the moment. You'll have seen, I think, two variations of the particle effects, two cycles of its history in that teaser video of all of 30 seconds. It won't even look like that when it's finished. It'll look hopefully better than that still. So it's there's still lots of work going on, but it's pretty much focusing at this point on sort of, I'd say, the majority of the effort are just finalising the physics.
Great. And but again, before we go into the screenshots, kind of a couple of areas of discussion that I know players were interested to find out a little bit more about, which were particles and performance. Because obviously particles, steam particles in particular, are gonna, as along with kind of the audio experience, provide, I suppose, that kind of element of immersion and realism that really is going to define what this release is going to look like. So in terms of the particle effects, and we'll see some of them in the video in a little while. But how are you happy with where the particles are at the moment, Matt? Is there more work that's going to be done on them?
As of where they are right now, no, I'm not, honestly. But there's more work been going on with them today. There will be more work going on with them tomorrow, possibly even for the next day, and that's based on my continuous iterating feedback back and forth with the guy who's doing that, who's probably really tired of hearing from me by now. But it's all because we want to get it right, and he does as well actually. So we're working hard on that. So it's it's about getting it right. So we're gonna do more. It's looking a lot better than it was. I think one of the clips, the steam is really thin and wispy as it's coming out. I mean, it's been fattened out and it's a lot more substantial now, but it's now too close to the train, and you see it almost like it's merging through the boiler. We got collision in the particles, so they'll now you go under a briar duct or go under a bridge, and you'll see it. It actually is quite cool because it kind of comes in the cab and gets in the way. Generally, it gets in the way as you'd expect it to. But interestingly, I saw someone pointed out on the video. There's a bit where the smoke actually goes under the bridge that's under the train. And actually, funnily enough, that was one of the things that's on the list to be worked at, and it's because for some reason, what they've found out is that the particles sometimes spawn inside the train and pop out under the train. And at this point, I think there are just a bunch of overlapping collision volumes, and they end up popping out under the bridge. It's not a common thing, as you can see from the video. Most of them are coming out on top just fine, but that is one of the things that's being looked at as well. So it's tidying up the collisions and so forth. So I've got high hopes for the particles, but where you're seeing it at right now is not where I want it to be.
Okay, and part two of that was performance. So where are we kind of at, Matt, with performance? Is it something that we're seeing good performance? Is there still work to do?
Oh, there is definitely still work to do on the performance side of it. This is common at this stage of the development. It's kind of like all the pieces of the puzzle have come together, and some of the pieces of the puzzle are not fitting quite right, and some of them are not quite the right size, and it's now just getting everything just optimized down. So really, a lot of the team that are, so the route building team, for example, while the route is by and large completed, the route team are now focusing on going back over some of the assets and where the memory reports are coming in too big, and saying, right, trim that down, those textures are too big, trim those down. And this is not about making things look bad. This is about, you put a 4K texture in a little tiny model. It doesn't need a 4K texture. So it's just finding things that are like that, or where too many polygons have been used, and just freeing up that memory without sacrificing the way that it looks. And that's kind of where the team are focusing at the moment, is looking at that. Performance-wise, I must admit I've not played it on Gen 8 yet myself, but certainly it's running on the PC same as anything else that I've run on the PC, so I'm not expecting any issues on that front, even with the particles. So, but I do want to do some testing on that probably over the next day or two, to be honest, as the current round of performance is going on, and we can take a look at that. So, but initial looks at it, it's coming in good actually.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess I suppose if something performs well on 8th gen consoles, so your PS4s, your Xbox Ones of this world, then you assume that it would work on the 9th gen consoles, and it would be better.
They run slightly different stuff because the Gen 9 runs bigger textures, more detailed meshes, more trains with more details, higher MIPS on the textures. So there are two different. So you kind of test Gen 8, you test Gen 9, and then you test PC, kind of broadly in those bits, because they're running slightly different versions in terms of how they work. But yes, at a fundamental level, the outlier in that is the Xbox Series S, because it's kind of somewhere between Gen 8 and Gen 9, and it thinks it's a Gen 9 console but has the memory of a Gen 8 console essentially.
We all know people like that.
It's a favourite topic. So one of the things, I did speak with the QA team last week, and one of the things, or a couple of weeks ago actually, and one of the things that they're doing is they're going to dial down the testing they do on Series X and up the testing they do on Series S, because in theory anything that can go wrong on an X will still go wrong on an S, but an S will potentially reveal more problems earlier. So focus the testing on that stuff, so that we get that stuff, because there's a lot of people out there using the Series S, and it's the sort of the oddest of the platforms, if you want to call it that, because all the PS5, whether it's the CD-ROM or the drive version or not, they've got the same shape, the same size memory and all the rest of it, whereas Series S and Series X are fundamentally quite different machines.
Okay, cool. I mean, as far as Steam goes, we're not going to go into an awful lot of detail about the actual ins and outs of playing the route. We'll do that when we do previews, and we'll show kind of the ins and outs of how it should work, and I mean, hopefully how it should work, and be able to give you kind of that first-hand experience, because obviously we can explain it here, but the best way that we can do that is by showing you. So we want to do it that way instead, and we'll be doing that as and when we get the build into the place that we want to get it into, which brings me nicely onto release date. We do not have a release date for you as it stands. It is not in the roadmap. We have not announced it yet, so stay tuned. Should we do the slideshow?
Yeah, let's have a look at some pictures.
Cool. Do you want to do a little bit of narration over the top of it, Matt?
This is the cab. The Jubilee and the Black 5, the Jubilee and the AF, sorry, have got similar, almost identical cabs actually, as they do in reality. Here we've got, I think these are lower quadrant signals, and the train is leaving Crewe. So this route has a mixture of lower quadrant and upper quadrant signals. So lower quadrant signals go down when they're off, and upper quadrant go up. And then this is a station somewhere on the route. I can't remember where. I want to say Hertford or something like that.
I think it's Hertford. Yeah.
So yeah, as you can see, it's only the 3 screenshots. These are the same ones as that were in the roadmap article, but it's good. There's some really nice animations on the firemen. I'm really pleased with how that's coming out, where you can see the firemen shoveling coal and dipping their head out the window to look ahead, as is one of the functions of a fireman. So you can see in that shot there where the driver's got his head just peeked out the window there. It looks really good. It's just brings the cabs to life a bit.
It's those little touches, isn't it? It feels really kind of like those little details that could have gone through we could have ignored, or we could have perhaps not paid as much attention to. I think that's what's going to be the real differentiator here, in terms of the enjoyment of the route. Is going to be those little touches that Steam enthusiasts are going to be like, oh, that's fantastic.
Yes.
And we're looking forward to seeing what your reactions are going to be.
Yes, it should be good fun. Actually, this is a good example of the first iteration of particle effects, which are all sort of really thin and away from the train. So as you'll see in the video, they've changed as well. Yeah.
Which brings us on to, should we show the video?
Shall we show the video?
Yeah,
sure.
This is a 25-second little teaser. It's got some really nice audio over the top of it, and we'll then talk a little bit about some of the things that are featured on the teaser.
I love this. The guy's done an amazing job.
25 seconds of joy.
Yeah.
Short but sweet.
Short but very sweet.
You can see when we talked a lot in the past around the wheel movement and making sure that wheel slip is as it should. Sorry, not wheel slip. The wheel movement is as it should be, and you can see that in the video. You can also see the wonderful Kia, which has been done by Tom Connell. That will be shown, I'm sure, plenty of times over the course of the next few months. But Matt, one of the things that was mentioned when people have been checking out that trailer is the audio of the whistle in particular. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm aware, all of the audio featured within it is
all recorded from
directly.
The real thing.
Yeah.
Yes. We got recordings working with Bossman Games. Actually, we got recordings of the Jubilee. We went out on a recording trip at the GCR to get recordings of the AF. And we got fresh wagon sounds, 2-axle wagon sounds to go there. We've got fresh sets of Mark 1 coach sounds. It's all new audio from anything we've done before.
And that's, again, very important. We will have an audio article and an audio interview as well, actually, coming up in the next couple of weeks, which will go into a bit more detail about how we put all this together, because the audio side of things is going to be so important in to kind of get that feeling absolutely spot on.
Absolutely. I mean, it was really good. Well, this time, something we've not done before, actually. One of the things that was really cool is the community team and the creative team actually went up with the audio reporters to get the to sort of interviews and to do some video capture. So that's something we've tried to do in the past, but the audio team have been busy for some strange reason doing audio recordings. So by sending the creative team up, we've been able to actually get some really cool footage. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of that video.
Yeah, the guys who went along, let's just say the phrase "kids in a sweet shop." They were absolutely made up to go and do it. So you see the fruits of their labours, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Okay, is there anything else, Matt, that you wanted to go over with regards to Steam? As I said, we're not going to go into a lot of detail about the specifics tonight. We wanted to touch on 2 or 3 kind of main topics that we know the community have been asking about. We'll go into more details about the actual operation of the locos and also the route itself in upcoming articles and in the preview live stream. And I'm going to say streams that we're going to be doing for this, because I think doing one preview stream is not going to do this justice.
Oh, no, totally. The more the merrier. I will say, Rhineworth Valley said, can the lamps be changed? Yes, we've made them individually clickable. That's quite cool.
Yes. Okay, well, let's put Steam on the side for the time being. We might come back to it a little bit later. But if there are loads of questions around it, but instead let's talk about the preservation crew. So Adam, I'm going to bring you in here because this is going to be something obviously that you are going to be very knowledgeable about. So we've kind of changed up a little bit on the preservation crew side of things, how we want to approach presenting these updates to you, at least on the roadmap anyway. One of the things that we're looking to do is to provide a scaling, or I said that very oddly then, scaling system, whereby we give a size associated to an update. So you can get a little bit of an indication of what that update is. What I wanted to do tonight, Adam, is to kind of go through each of the items on the current list of preservation crew updates and kind of get a sense of what those are going to entail. And again, people who are going to make TLDWs or want to make a list, please get your pens ready, because we're going to probably go through quite a lot of information in quite a short space of time here. But let's go through them, and I want to just give a quick summary of what players can expect from that particular release. And bear with me one second, I'm just scrolling down so that I can get them all. So let's start with Hauptstrecke Rheinruhr. That's the top of the list, and it says medium next to it. Now, what does that mean?
So basically what we've done is looked at the number of features that have been upgraded on the route since its previous update, if it's had one. And that means obviously there are some on there that have got tiny or small next to them. Originally when JD asked me to put some scaling next to these, I wasn't aware that they were going to go out as those actual words. I may have spent a bit more time thinking about what words I was using.
We can refine it next time.
Huge. But yes, so effectively, all the paragraph just above that list has a lot of different features in it, such as animated crossings, improved track rendering, bug fixes, support for rail drivers, stuff like that. But obviously there's the qualifying line that says not all add-ons or not all updates will get all of these features, pretty much for the reason that not all of them are needed. Maybe some of them were already present in the game when that route was released. So what we've been doing, what the preservation crew has been doing, is creating a level playing field and giving every route all of the features. So for instance, something like West Somerset Railway or Long Island Railroad, those have already had an update previously. They've already had a lot of the features added. So the update we plan in this list is a lot smaller compared to something like Rus Ignored or Great Western Express that hasn't yet seen an update. So to start with, Hauptstrecke Rheinruhr, on the list of included features is the rush hour passenger system, contact signaler functionality system, the improved skies, the improved track rendering, the addition of platform departure boards and all the data that goes into the trains that drive that as well. Expansion of the scenario planner options and formations, and the addition of rail driver support. So that gives you an idea of what a medium size is. And then on the opposite scale, something that's marked as tiny might be just one of those features. So it might just be the addition of Dovetail Live Mastery Ward. It might be the addition of rush hour passenger system. But then if we get to something the opposite end of the scale, on the huge end, such as Peninsula Corridor or Oakville, these are marked as such because not only are they all the features that are listed in that paragraph above, they've literally had to have everything installed, but we've also done what I term internally as a deep dive on all the reported feedback. So if there's any bugs in the system, if there's any issues that need to be resolved, if there's any problems with scoring or some difficulties with completing the scenarios, be them issues or just the flow's not very good or something, then an awful lot of work has gone into that. So for those of you who've been watching for a while, you'll know that Oakville and Peninsula Corridor were the two routes we last did the deep dive on, which was just after the summer release last year. So they have been waiting a little while to get their updates out, but they are coming. We have a great schedule going. And one of the reasons you probably have seen an adjustment in the order, where we said that the order they are from top to bottom is roughly the order they'll be released in. That is because as we have been testing, and we have been going through all the features that we've added, some issues have still come up and some things are still being found, and a few things are proving difficult to resolve. So what we've done is just moved a few around to bring those that are so far going well through the testing cycle, so they're ready to come out, and move back a few that do need some more time. It is tough when you see an add-on that you're really keen to have, a route or a train, that you really want to see an update to, move further down the list. But when this stuff comes out, we want it to be great. We don't want to cause disappointment. So we need to make sure it gets the time that it needs to ensure a smooth delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the point of a roadmap. This is not, this is kind of the exact function of a roadmap, is to be able to articulate to everybody at home what is happening within development, and therefore things do move around, because development isn't a binary. We've chosen to do it, it's done, let's release it. There are a lot more kind of nuance to it than that. There's a lot more things that go into it than that, and we do find problems sometimes. We do find things that take us longer than we initially thought, or we call them dependencies. But say, for instance, we're looking at putting something in and it requires another team who don't quite have the time yet to be able to do that kind of thing. It just means that, as I say, sometimes things end up taking a little bit longer than expected. Having said that, with the current list on the preservation crew roadmap list, the idea is that we will release the next one of those, the next update of those, around the Steam release. It might be a little bit before, it might be a little bit after. We haven't quite confirmed as of yet what that's going to look like, but we want to try and get at least two of those, the top two, in there. It might be that we're able to get more in there as well, for the next release. So keep an eye on that.
I mean, talking on that front, while we only list, say, Habstracker, Rheinruhr and Rus Ignored, you've also got to think that alongside those is the BR101, the BR155, and the BR363. So we've actually got 7. No, sorry, I can't count. 5 in that, in just those 2 that we've actually mentioned. So alongside each route DLC is also all the supporting locomotives that come with them. So we need to think about that. And then if you're queuing all of those up on all the different hardware platforms, it does amount very quickly to a lot of different things to test and make sure. So, so yeah, even though it might be 1 or 2 routes that move around, it could be quite a significant amount of work. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to drill into a couple of these specific updates that we want to touch on, because there have been a couple of questions about, is this going to be featured within the preservation crew update? The destination boards for Great Western Express, is that going to be, is the preservation update going to be that included within it?
Yes, absolutely. So not only the Class 166 has had the brand new functionality built into the train itself that required a reasonable amount of artwork as well, we've also taken the time to significantly rework the internals of that train. It was a little bit of a can of worms situation, where this train was one of the original passenger trains we ever built for Trains and World, and therefore we've now done a lot of different things and changed a lot of different processes since that train was made. And just adding the PIS system was a significant undertaking. That was originally a job slated to take about a month of Martin's time. He ended up spending 3 months on it. So that's one of the reasons that has moved along quite a bit, because we needed to resolve a number of issues to make sure that train was working as well as it should have been. Under today's environment, as well as ensuring that it's as efficient on the performance side of things. And then alongside that, we have added the dynamic destination boards to the platforms as well of that route. And again, because Great Western was one of our very early, in fact, our first, as I say, passenger routes in Trenton World. It was the second route I think we released ever to the franchise. The way we did timetables and the order that we did things, such as the preparation time that the driver gets before they depart, was handled differently to the way it is handled now. And as a result of some of the differences in the way the timetable worked, it wasn't entirely compatible with the PIS system that was being installed that works on pretty much every other route. Given that rapid transit was the third route, that worked quite happily. So we have actually had to make some changes to the PIS system as a result of that, some of which you'll have seen appearing in Trenton World already. That went out with the previous update as we queue these things up. So yeah, there's been some really powerful changes made to the software as well as to the routes and trains that are coming.
And that's why it's a large update
Yeah.
for GWE. So
in fact, I did miss one. I have been in contact with some members of the forum regarding the physics concerns with the 166. To date, we have been very wary of changing the physics too much on any train for fear of the repercussions. You just never know when you change something what knock-on it would have. You know, as I've already said with the PIS system on the 166, the knock-on that had. And so far, following the changes that were suggested to us and the investigations we've been doing, we have been able to make improvements to the acceleration of the Class 166. So that's actually gone really, really positive. It was one of those things that I wanted to make sure the Great Western Update was in a great place before we did it, to make sure that if there were any problems, we could sideline or back out those changes without having a knock-on, because the last thing you want to do is test something but then start building on top of it with other changes that you want to make. So I needed to make sure that Great Western Express was already in a strong position before having a look at the Class 166 physics. And so far it's been really good, really positive testing that's been going on. So that's looking very strong.
Great, and we are when that update goes live, we want to get the preservation crew onto a 4-up challenge on that route. So we're going to do that, and that is a I'm not going to say it's a promise because we can't 100% confirm it, but Adam is prepping the team to jump on and do a 4-up challenge for GWE. You've got big boots to fill because I'm currently the reigning champion. But yeah, we'll see if we can get that into the Ralphland TV schedule as and when that update goes live.
Yes, and the good thing is that through pure coincidence, the other Adam on my team is not available when we're thinking of doing it. So there will only be one Adam that could possibly be the winner. But yeah, the team have been enjoying the update to Great Western Express so much that we wanted to do something along with the community as well. So at the moment, we're looking at service 2P21, I believe. That was recommended by the community as the 4-up challenge, but also we're open to if anyone else thinks there'd be a good service that we could run. The team are looking forward to driving the 166 with its improvements. Hopefully, obviously, it can only occur once the update is out, so we're currently waiting on that.
Nice one. And you knew I was going to mention the win at some point, chat. You knew it. I was just waiting for the right opportunity. One more question on, two more questions actually on the Pres Crew stuff. So one of the things that was mentioned was Long Island Railroad. Now that's classed currently as I think it's a small update on the schedule. Players wanted to know about the traction engine noises on the M7. Now, given that obviously we've done some work with Harlem on the M7A, is that something that we're going to look to sort of retrofit onto the M7?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it. So under the small update list for Long Island Railroad, the outstanding stuff from last year's update is the rush hour passengers, the animated level crossings, contact signaler functionality. I can't remember whether that was on the route or within the train itself. and some improvements to the rail driver mapping on that. And then the key one, obviously, is improvements to the audio. And yes, as mentioned previously, we were actually holding back on this because we wanted to see with the Harlem update, the Harlem development, sorry, that meant we had the entire audio team looking into the M7 and what improvements can be made, and also with them thinking forward to what we could do and what we could bring back to the Long Island Railroad M7. So there was purposeful delay in making the changes, making improvements, and then obviously seeing the reaction and how well the M7A has been developed. But that is in the list. That is the key thing for the Long Island Railroad update, is to make sure the audio has been improved. So yeah, continuing to look at that.
Cool. And one final thing, because it's not actually on the roadmap, and can't remember why it wasn't on the roadmap.
We're about to find out.
We were talking about when we were showing off the SD40 about the sounds on the SD40, the horn on the SD40 being backported into Clinchfield. Now, is that something that is currently being worked on, or is that something which is still a little bit early days as of yet?
It's not currently on my radar, purely for the fact that we still have about 16 or 17 routes to worry about, and rolling stock and locomotive DLCs alongside that as well. So yeah, it's still logged in the system, but it's not currently active at the moment.
Cool. And finally, we've just had Matt. Do you want to quickly interrupt here?
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Hot off the press.
Sorry, yeah. When we put the it was quite a while ago. I spoke to the audio team. Probably one of the other times this came up, and I asked another Adam, audio Adam, to populate put the horn into the Clinchfield SD40. So I think that it's in and amongst waiting for Clinchfield to get its turn through QA. But the change itself, I believe, is done. So it's coming.
Perfect.
What I'll do then is get that added to the list of stuff that we have prepped and scheduled, and yeah, that could be cool. But yeah, another Adam, so that counts as gameplay Adam myself. Art Adam is also on my team. Audio Adam is on another team, and I believe this week I've seen the introduction of an engineering Adam. So we're starting to cover all disciplines here. I think we need an Adam team.
We've got so many Matts, Adams, and Chris's within Dovetail. I've got a pretty common name, and I feel actually like I'm a bit unique here, to be honest with you. So
we got some James.
We have got some Jameses, but none really that I have that I like. We work closely together, but obviously there are people that you speak to more than others within the different teams. So I've not really had the chance to speak to many Jameses, but there we go.
We will sort out Team James.
Yes.
We need a Team Adam 4-up, a Team James 4-up, a Team Chris 4-up.
Yes.
Team Chris would be quite fun because they're all in the same team and they actually have the same final initial as well. So that's all good.
We need to make this happen.
What I will say, one final thing on the fact that we've spent some time on Great Western Express, is to confirm that livery designer functionality will not be provided in the Great Western Express update. I have previously mentioned basically the amount of work it takes to implement the livery designer compatibility means that is running on a different schedule to the rest of the updates to all of these routes. The HST is very high on the to-do list. I think it might well be the next train that Jake is due to work on. He's got other projects at the moment, but each of these updates, they will state whether they have livery designer compatibility. We won't leave that up to guesswork, but I can confirm, the Great Western Express, the HST is not ready yet for livery designer.
And one more final thing, sorry, I forgot to mention. Rapid
Final.
Yeah, Rapid Transit, will that include the PZB fix?
It is, yes. That is in the medium size. There are a number of other updates as well with that. Again, it's just been a scheduling thing. We did consider putting this out, but because we'd started to implement the active PIS system on the train itself, at the point that we were asked, can we release the PZB fix? Unfortunately, we had the train in bits all over the floor while we were building new parts to it, and that meant that we couldn't put the PZB fix out. But yeah, you can see that's very high on the list, and one would hope it'll come out soon.
Nice one. Okay, Preservation Crew, we'll put that down there, but I'm sure over the course of the next few roadmaps we can chat a little bit more about some of the things, we can show off some more stuff, and hopefully by the time we chat next time we'll be able to talk about the success of the at least getting one of them out potentially. All right. One of the things that I probably should have mentioned earlier on, actually, and probably it's a reason that because of the way that it's been put in the roadmap at the moment, it's probably the reason why we've not spoken about it quite as much. But we have added a US route to the roadmap this time round, in a similar vein to the German route, which is also currently on the roadmap. Just a little note on those, because I know there was quite a lot of discussion about what is and what isn't included within that. They are very new. They are in very early stages at the moment. We wanted to let you know that we are working on them, but they are not at the moment sort of number one priority as we work through Spirit of Steam, all the Preservation Crew content that Adam has mentioned beforehand, and some of the improvements to the game that we're going to be talking about over the course of the rest of the stream. So they are being worked on, but they're very, very early doors at the moment. When we have more information for you and things are in a place where we want to come out and sing it from the rooftops, then we will do. So you might not see too much movement in the next couple of roadmaps as well on those. Next thing, Bakerloo Timetable. And I'm going to bring both of you in here because as far as I understand it, this is something that's going to be kind of straddling both sort of Matt's team and Adam's team. This is something that we talked about a long time ago, and we kind of promised to players way back when. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this because we've talked in the past about needing to have certain criteria or certain tools upgraded in order to put this live for players. And by the way, it's not being put live in the near future. It's something that we're adding to the roadmap this time around because it's being worked on and it's currently going through testing. But we are adding, is it 600 plus playable services to Bakerloo? Now that feels like it's a pretty significant amount of work. And Matt, can you give us a little bit of an insight as to how we've gone from where we were probably about 6 months ago, where we were talking about needing to fulfill all of these different things before we can even consider releasing it, to where we are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we did the original Bakerloo timetable, we identified there was 12 things in the full list, but 4 that were needed to really enable the Bakerloo timetable to be done in a sensible amount of time. I mean, it's one of those things with infinite time. You could have done it without them, but it became very complex and iterative. Over the course of time since Bakerloo came out and we started working on these things, a number of those changes have been done. So 3 out of those 4 have actually been done, and we've been benefiting from them in various routes. So these are things like previously you'd have to set up a service to always leave at a set time, whereas actually if you got something that's more dynamic, you want it to leave 2 minutes after it got there or something like that. You actually want something slightly more dynamic, and things like that got added in, and a number of other checks got added in. All sorts of, really, there was three of the 4 things. The 4th one is about dynamic routing and pathing, and that's actually proved very difficult to get working in an environment which has not really been built for dynamic pathing. So that hasn't been done yet. But in the meantime, Joe, being the Joe that Joe is decided, you know what, I'm going to have a go, because maybe those 3 are enough. Turns out they were. So no, this is by no means a small undertaking. Joe has spent a considerable amount of time making this, but he's built a new timetable based around the 2021 post-COVID timetable, working timetable number 47 from TFL. And he's been able to put this timetable together, following the real one, and it's exciting. It's really good. Standing at Queen's Park, and there's just trains endlessly going through it. So this delivers much more what you're expecting from sort of the level of an underground route.
Yeah, and if I'm understanding rightly, this isn't a shortcut. This isn't a we've cut corners here to try and get this out. It's just a happy coincidence that the work that Joe has been putting together has meant that this final part of the jigsaw hasn't necessarily been needed to happen
exactly
in order to get to that point.
There's no shortcuts at all, Joe. Like I said, Joe spent a lot of time on this, and didn't even tell us he was working on it to some extent. It's one of those, I want to do it, and he's been busy working on it, and when he got it mostly there, he showed it to me, and it blew me away, frankly. It's a very impressive piece of work, and I'm looking forward to getting that out to people.
Love to get Joe
where
on.
we sit at the moment is trying to get Joe to let go of it. He has said it's pretty much there. I'm currently working on trying to get all the text and everything localized, so it's ready to be included, and Joe wants to keep making changes. Because this wasn't something that was planned to be included or released, then we're not pressuring him to get it finished. I'm waiting for him to give me the okay. But yes, every couple of days he says it's ready to go. Oh, but I just need to make one final adjustment or tweak here and there. So it has definitely been something of love for sure for Joe. He is a big fan of our UK content, so it's really good to see that happen.
Yeah, and he's in the chat as well. Hello, Joe. We've got a little crib sheet, Matt. Is there anything that we haven't included from the crib sheet that Joe sent through?
So I'm
going to leave one bit.
I'm going to leave one bit out because you know what?
Ooh.
You need some surprises. There's some pretty cool
mysterious
stuff that's it's nothing massive, but it's one of those that when you see it, when you're driving, you'll be like, yes. That's certainly what I thought anyway. So leaving that out, the last part of the document, Willesden Junction Depot has been populated based on some of the photographs and so forth that he's seen. So there's some static stock dotted around Willesden. Playable services, 600 includes all passenger services between midnight and 23:59. 16 trains per hour between Elephants and Castle and Queen's Park off peak. 8 trains per hour between Queen's Park and Stonebridge Park. 4 trains per hour between Stonebridge Park and Harrow and Wealdstone. There's a rail tour run that lets you run the 1938 stock on it. And then there's depot moves and non-stop runs through the tunnels and so forth. So tons of variety, tons of things to do, and trains galore. And other stuff you will find out about later.
I was trying to mentally do some maths as you were going through it, and then I gave up very, very quickly. So it sounds very exciting, and obviously big kudos to
28
Joe.
28 is the number you were looking for.
28. 42 is the answer to everything. Yeah, thanks very much for Joe kind of putting that together. Really great to be able to put that into the roadmap. As Adam was talking about, there are a few bits and pieces that we need to do in order to get that out to you. But there is work that is being undertaken at the moment to bring that to a point where we're happy to release it. So no date on that yet, but we will update you when we know more.
What I would say, I don't know whether we've explicitly confirmed it. It is a new timetable.
Yes.
Joe has built this from the ground up, so it's not an extension of the existing one. It's not an adjustment of the existing one. This was built from scratch, so it will appear alongside both the default original release timetable and if you have it, the 1938 timetable as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I'd love to get. I mean, I know he's definitely loves being in the chat, but I'd love to get Joe on a stream again at some point soon, so that we can run through the new Bakerloo with him at the helm, telling us all about it.
You heard Joe.
I just saw someone say there we should get him working on a GWE timetable. He does want to do one, but he's just got too many that he wants to do.
He wants to do all of them.
Yes, it just falls into what order he does them. At the moment, he hasn't made any changes to GWE. It is still the same timetable. But yeah, that would be very cool.
Cool. And Joe said he doesn't mind joining the stream, so I'm taking that as a gospel promise. He's coming on at some point in the future when we want to show this off.
Careful what you wish for, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll move on quickly to the DBBR 187. So Adam, I'm coming to you on that one. Adam, in case anybody is not aware, looks after our third-party releases and working with the developers in order to get those over to you in the best possible condition that they can be. So DBBR 187, obviously we are aware that there are some challenges with it. The review score currently does not lie. So we've spoken to Skyhook, as we have been throughout kind of this whole process since it's been released, and also pre-release as well, to work out what it is that we want to ask them to focus on in terms of improvement to the loco. But Adam, do you want to give us a little bit more detail?
So pretty much since the release of Horseshoe, Skyhook have reassigned their developers, their engineers back onto the 187. This has been after watching the community with feedback and ensuring that the right things should be given attention. So for the most part, to this point in time, they've been resolving PISA B, ELSA B issues, how the functionality of AFB is integrated into the train. I think they were working originally off of an older version of the function. They've now updated that to the latest standards that we've implemented, and been looking at performance of the train as well as audio related to the safety systems. So pretty much their focus has been on the safety systems. I'm still chasing them for audio improvements, and at the moment we're discussing whether to release an update to the 187 with the progress so far, or whether to wait and ensure that audio improvements go in as well. So that's under debate at the moment.
Cool. If it were up to me, I would put the safety systems improvements in first, because I think that probably is the impairment to actually being able to do things. Whereas obviously the audio we want to improve, but it's not necessarily something that's going to stop somebody from being able to do something. That would be my recommendation anyway, but I know it's not my decision. That would be my choice.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, 187 is we'll move on from that. But again, when we know more, when we have a window in which that's likely to be released, we will of course keep you guys in the loop. Let's talk save game. This is a bit of a beast, and we've not necessarily talked much about the save game in the past 5 years of Train Sim World being a thing, and it's been something that has ebbed and flowed within the community over the course of that period of time, with varying degrees of challenges associated with it. We wanted to get this into the roadmap today, not necessarily to provide a really tangible update on the progress that we're making, but we wanted to be able to provide a bit more information about actually what we believe the problem might be, because this is something that's not a simple, you can change this for one thing and it makes it good for everything. Matt sort of smiles ruefully because he wishes that were the case. We wanted to just, and again, it's a really good section. If you haven't read the roadmap yet, really recommend you read that section, because it gives far more eloquently a depiction on the challenges that are associated with the save game. But Matt, I'm going to ask you to be able to kind of go through this in a little bit more detail now for the people watching at home. Where are we currently at with it? Provide as much context as you need to, and what do we believe the source, or what are we sort of surmising that the source of the problem might be?
So what I've summarised in the roadmap is kind of what we know at this point. At this point in time, just to be clear, there is no one looking at save game. So the first step is to understand what's wrong. And what's wrong is more than it don't work. That's the broad summary of it, and it's completely correct. However, there is more than just that to it, because actually in some cases it does work, and in many cases it kind of works but not well enough to actually be useful. So it's kind of what are all of those facets, what's actually going on there, so it's based on what we've understood is kind of what I've outlined. And that's, so for example, trains, when they restore, it puts all the trains back on the track in the right places, but then what happens is it then goes through each train and tells it how to get to where it wants to go, and in doing so might do that in a different order to the way it was done when it was saved. So the priorities might be now different, which is how you potentially will get a red light when you finish, because now trains kind of are now dependent on the one behind them in some weird fashion. So there's an element of that that we've sort of seen. So they've got the core things. So that kind of thing would be a core dispatcher fix that would be a one fix for all. Yeah, that is one of those things that would likely be a one fix for all. And then you've got is the locomotive coming back in its full state? Are the levers in the right places? And not just the levers, but all of the little variables and so forth inside the scripts for the locos. Are they all being restored correctly? And then are all the processes that are running at that point, are they all coming back on correctly? And is everything in the right state? And again, in a lot of cases, a lot of it is, but it only takes one thing to make it wrong to make it all sort of come off the rails, if you pardon the pun. Sorry, I have to.
Anything to get you through it, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. I get the point. And then at another level, so those fixes would be a per vehicle fix. So that would be a case of, right, we would do a test on each loco, and it's not even necessarily the same things would be wrong on each loco. So each loco would need to be then tested, understood what's wrong, fixed, and then it would then be part of an update. And then the last key aspect I think that needs to be looked at is the gameplay side of it. So when a scenario is running, it has state. It knows what's going on at a particular moment in a scenario. It knows what objectives have been completed, what haven't. Some of that stuff is automatically handled, but if the gameplay developers can do all sorts of cool things with the power of Unreal Blueprint, are all of those being captured and then restored the way that they should be along that? So there's a number of elements, and that's only the sort of what we're immediately aware of based on playthrough and so forth. The next major step is to actually getting a QA engineer assigned as tomorrow, I think, and what they're going to be doing is trying to exhaustively test pick one add-on and then just figure out everything that's wrong with it from a save game perspective, just to try and come up with, and this will be how we sort of figure out how we test this going forward. So, and then once the learnings from this will then go into everything we do going forward, so that this is how we test save game, and this is what we found out. Well, when we make a new add-on, do those tests again, and let's make sure it's right before we release it, you know. So this is a really good exercise, both to understand what needs to happen to fix it, fix the history, to fix the core game where it needs fixing, but also to make sure the new content is made correctly in the first place. And as I said, I think what we'll find is that the locos are by and large 99% right, but it only takes that 1% for it to go wrong, and it's trying to make sure we find that 1% and create a nice set of test harnesses, test frameworks, and test specs, which allow the QA team, the wider QA team, going forward to pull that in. So out of that, there'll be a series of, these are the things wrong with the core, these are the things wrong with these locos, these are the things wrong with these scenarios, and then we can start working through it. And then what we can do then is, once we've done this first round, we'll be able to then come back via another roadmap stream, another roadmap document, and give you an update, what we found, and and where we're at and what we're going to do about it.
I'm going to hold you to that, Matt, because it is.
I said another. I didn't say which one.
It is a really important thing for us to be getting right. A save game, particularly as we've got longer and longer scenarios, particularly US freight routes, I know a real challenge for this kind of thing. If the save game isn't working as intended, it's a real frustration for players. And we know, as I say, that when we're creating scenarios of sometimes in excess of 90 minutes, they're playing for 90 minutes in one go is quite draining, and you might want to come back to it. So it's a really important thing for us to investigate. Now, we've obviously talked about this, Matt's talked in quite a lot of detail about this tonight. This isn't a guarantee of a fix. This is very much this is what we would like to do, and this is what we're going to do in terms of investigating the scale of the problem. When we come back and we find out more, then we'll be able to come back. Then we'll be able to talk about how we're going to action this, how we're going to be able to, or what we're going to be able to do with the information that we've got. So this isn't a guarantee of a fix at this stage, because we don't know the full extent of the problem to a certain extent. But we will come back to you with more information when we have it.
Yeah. The key at this point is to get some hard facts and some clear next steps, and then prove those next steps and move on. So, as we reach a milestone, we'll give you an update.
Nice one. Okay, I'm just seeing if there's any way that we can bring the next question to Adam, but I think that most of these now are geared towards Matt. So let's talk. Actually, because we didn't talk about it when it came to Steam. Something that I think again is probably worth a wider discussion is console beta, because part of the console beta project was to try and make sure that we had a group of players who were going to be able to come in and help provide the same service that we ask of our PC and Steam testers that come in and play our content and try and identify any issues that might arise from it, any inaccuracies, and provide that feedback to development so that then they can work on them. Now, we've been able to bring, I think it's over 20 testers into the Xbox beta system that we've put together, and they are going to be working. There's going to be a core update that comes alongside Steam, and we want to try and make sure that they are then testing that content to as much as they possibly can do, because with a core update there are things that hit things that we don't necessarily expect it to hit, and impact things that we never in a million years would expect this piece of code to impact something else over on this side on a completely different piece of content. So we've asked them to kind of help us out with that process, and that is very much a pilot for this. This is something that we're going to try and then roll out and be a little bit more active with in the future. Obviously Xbox at the moment primarily because it's a slightly more simple system for us to be able to do this. But Matt, am I right in thinking that we're going to be looking at opportunities for PlayStation as well in the future?
Yeah, so we're going to roll it out in stages. Working with beta on consoles is quite different to working with it on Steam. So we just need to understand the right step and then take that step and do that. So the first step has been to get people so we can get a bunch of players who can use an unreleased version of the game core. Prove that they can get that version and that they can test it and it behaves the way we expect. And that's going 100% exactly the way we wanted it to. Happy to report, actually, the new core is so far not causing any problems at all. So that's really, really been positive. So that's good. The next phase is getting Add-ons updates, the Preserve Crew updates, getting them out to the Xbox. So this is getting the Xbox beta testers so that they can get updates to existing content. Which is done a different way to getting access to new content. So there's all these different steps and, and methods we need to apply. So we'll get the updates available to beta. That'll be the next round of testing. We layer in, and then we'll get them access to new content, which is the last step of the way. And meanwhile, we'll start looking at how we do PlayStation beta. I have no idea how we do that at the moment. I know we can do the equivalent of the Insider program for completely brand new releases, but that's not what we are. Same as Insider program doesn't work for us on this, and we found other ways through talking to our Microsoft partners as a partner. So we'll talk to Sony, we'll find out what the options are for doing that, and then we can, if there's an option there we can go forward with, then we'll be able to start rolling people in. We've got this the 64 gig DLC fix that's being worked on, and at some point we're going to want to get people to. So my kind of what I want to do is start getting people on board for PlayStation beta testing around the time we have that ready, because it feels important that PlayStation beta players are confirming that it's fixing their issue and it's working well as it's also working fine on Xbox. So we'll get got the PlayStation players well in our mind, but we're just doing this step by step.
Yeah, and I had a really good segue onto the liveries being provided back to Xbox players. But you also mentioned the PS5 DLC problem. Which one would we like to go through first? Do we want to do the Xbox liveries?
Let's talk about liveries.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the updates that comes with the Steam release, or one of the core updates that's going to come with the Steam release, is one of the. A lot of players might not necessarily be aware of this because it probably only affected a small group of people. But there was a period after an update to Creators Club last month, I think it was, where I think it was a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours after the update, if you logged in on Xbox, you would lose access to the liveries that you created on Creators Club. We have identified a fix for this. It's going through this beta process, and actually the beta testers, Matt, you were saying, we didn't tell them this.
We didn't actually tell them that this was coming, and just keeping an eye on the Discord, and they started saying, "Oh, my liveries have started reappearing." So, and they've appeared in the editor as well, so I can change them. So it's kind of good validation that the again, Xbox beta testers trialing things which are brand new, and also that that's all seems to be working. So, yeah. Very pleased with that. Great work on the part of the team involved.
Yeah, and as I say, it's a good, I suppose, case study in actually how in depth some of our testers will go when they're playing the game in their usual format, which is great. So it's a good validation on our front that we've picked some really good individuals here to be able to test some of this content. And if you are interested, obviously there will be other opportunities in the future. We've got a big group of people. We had a sign up sheet last month, which we allowed. We asked people to sign up for. I think we had about 120 people sign up for that. So we have a big long list of potential people to invite in the future as well. For Xbox, we'll have a similar process for PlayStation further down the line when we can work out the ins and outs of how that will work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, PlayStation 5 DLC, 64 gig limit. Matt, do you want to give us a quick, for those who aren't aware, where we're what the challenge is, and maybe a quick update on where we're at with the solution?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been sorry, my PC's going belong. Yeah, so it's quite tough because while the core change for loading and unloading content dynamically has now been in and working for a while, it's what the engineer is doing is carefully going through each screen in the game and each thing that you can do in the game and making sure that it's accessing the data it can access, and then if it's expecting data to be there. So the whole user interface, for example, has been built around the assumption that all data is available and it can just go and search through the entirety of everything it wants in memory and it's all there. This is no longer true. But we don't want to change the user interface, so it's kind of how do we work around that? So he's been working through screens one at a time and changing the way the screen works, not the output of the screen, but how the screen works, so that it's sensitive to the to this change. And I think at the moment he's on the player profile screen, which he was shaking his head and going, "This screen, it needs everything." So it's difficult work, but I think he's coming to the end of it. I think this is one of the final screens. So I think we're coming to a point now where we might start getting to see internal builds of this. And then we can talk more about it, and then we'll start rolling it out for beta. So I don't want to put any kind of a date on it at this point, except that I think we're seeing the end of this one coming soon.
TM coming soon. TM. So this system is a system that we rolled out across all platforms. So obviously it is primarily for PS5 players, but it's something that will be that the back end will be implemented across Xbox and also our PC platforms as well. This, we hope, will be a longer term improvement. There were a lot of kind of shortcut ways that we could perhaps approach this. There were ways that we could kind of fudge it, and we might have been subject to a similar challenge in 6 months' time, or it might not have worked, or it might have gone against Sony's T's and C's. But we've worked really closely with Sony on this to get it to the point that it's got to. At the moment, they're happy with it.
Yeah, they're really happy with it. Yeah.
We're happy with it, and we hope that, say, this will kind of, I want to use a really corporate word here, future-proof it for other platforms
Thinking outside
in the
the
future.
box there, JD.
Blue
Does
Star
that mean
thinking,
assigning it to my team?
And then there are a couple of questions that came out of this earlier, so I just wanted to pose them to you, Matt, from the players. Will this impact? So a lot of our PC or Steam players in particular were asking about mods. Will this impact mods? Because we're obviously touching a lot of different types of files. Very technical. I don't fully understand it. But in a short answer, in layman's terms, will this impact mods?
So I asked the engineer who's working on this, and he started out saying, no, of course it won't. Oh, no, wait. It might actually. Okay, I'll fix it. So let me just summarize that by saying we will make it part of the beta testing and QA process that we test mods and make sure that they work. Now, if it turns out to be a substantial issue that we can't make them work, then we'll let you know, because obviously we don't officially support mods. However, I don't want to just accidentally break mods for a silly reason. If we will do our best to make them stay working, and we seem reasonably confident that will be the case. So I'm not concerned, but I'm not making any guarantees either. So we will tell you as and when we start going through, and we'll ask the beta team to help us with that testing as well, so we get a wide variety of opinions and mods and so forth on that. So I'm hopeful. I'm very confident actually.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of our beta testers will use a lot of different types of mods as well, so we should hopefully be able to get quite a good broad range of understanding with that as well.
I mean, maybe it could be like when we've had Unit 4 engine upgrades. There may need to be a new version of the mod, but when we know more information...
We're not doing anything that should require even a new version of the mod to be packaged. But as Adam says, until we get there, we don't know for sure. We'll let you know. And what we might do, if it sounds like we're going to run into a situation like that, we'll try and rope in a couple of modders so that you can work with us. But we'll test the mods that are out there, some of the mods that are out there, just to see whether we think there's going to be an issue. I think it'll be fine, but we'll let you know for sure.
Cool. And one kind of final question, because I'm not going to talk about performance improvements tonight per se, because we've updated it in the article. There's not an awful lot to talk about really at the moment, because we're still kind of working through some of this stuff. But this solution for the PS5 DLC limit improvement, because it mounts specific pieces of content, so theoretically you might only be playing with 3 or 4 pieces of content, whereas beforehand you might be playing with 25 pieces of content loaded into your game. Are we hoping or expecting that on those all platforms, if this fix is going across all the platforms, that there are likely to be improvements to crashing as a result of this this new system?
So crashing is a broad thing and can be caused by a number of things. If the crashing is caused by a lack of memory, potentially. So the way that, because we're only loading in what needs to be loaded in at any given moment, the game, the fundamental change is that rather than loading everything that you've got, and the way Unreal works is that loading in a pack file doesn't load the entire pack file into memory, because that just wouldn't fit. But what it does is it keeps an index, like a catalogue of what's inside every file, and that catalogue from every file fills up a chunk of memory. So we're not 100% sure yet how much this is going to be, because if you don't access the pack file, it hasn't got the catalogue file, so it's not using that memory, and then there will be other bits of memory being used as well. So by not doing it, we save that RAM. So there is potentially a memory saving, and we don't know how much that is yet. One of the first things we're going to benchmark, and then we'll be able to come back and say, yeah, it saves memory, all 2 kilobytes of it, or wow, that saved 200 megabytes of memory, in which case you're really going to feel it. So we'll come back and we'll let you know actually what that ends up being. But it's an improvement in memory usage, and potentially a reasonable one.
If I'm learning anything from this roadmap stream, it's that game development is essentially a juggling act, but juggling with things that are on fire, things that are of different shapes, things that I don't quite understand and I can't pronounce properly.
Meta concepts.
Yeah, it's
and
not.
God forbid you ever have to go back and change them. Blimey.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, and I hope, as I say, one of the things that we wanted to try and do with this new roadmap design and this layout is to actually provide like open up the hood to development, provide a little bit more information, context as to why we're doing what we're doing, why some things are more challenging than others, why some things might take a little bit more time than others to achieve. And there's a lot of detail in this roadmap in particular. Don't expect them all to be, I think this one was about 10 pages of Microsoft Word. I don't expect all of them to be 10 pages long, but it does hopefully give you a little bit more information about the challenges that we face, but the challenges that we're going to, and how we're going to be approaching those challenges in the near and the slightly more distant future. So hopefully you enjoy it, and I sound like I'm wrapping up the live stream. I'm not. Hopefully you enjoy it, and I would, if you've got any feedback for us about what you'd like to see more, we like to do things like development deep dives, for instance, where we I think we did with Adam's team for the last roadmap. This one was long enough already without us going into much more detail, but the save game section is probably the closest comparable there, where we go into a little bit more detail and we talk about some of the things that we've done as part of that. It might be, say, for instance, that we can get Joe on to talk about the Bakerloo the Bakerloo Timetable,
Good
and the
idea.
process of building that. So I'll get him to do that. I'll see if we can get that done for next time, possibly. But yeah, it's a good opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about how we do these things and celebrate some of the members of the team that perhaps don't often get celebrated as well for the work they do.
Yeah, I think we talked previously as well about doing a livery designer insight as well. So getting Jake on, or getting Jake to detail what it takes to make a locomotive livery designer compatible.
Awesome. Okay, so PS5 add-on update we have now done. I'm going to put cross through that one. Xbox Audio. Now, again, Matt, do you want to give us a little bit of context for what this is all about and a little bit of the detail of what we've done so far?
Yeah, so the Xbox audio issue, if you don't play on an Xbox, you probably have no idea. This is unique to the Xbox, and it's because of, or what we understand so far is it's because of the X Audio engine that is used to do audio on the Xbox. It's not the only way of doing it, which is what I'll come on in a minute, but it's the default way of doing it. What it's exhibited as is called the jackhammer problem on the forums, which is quite appropriate. What it is that you'll be driving along and something like a motor sound is usually tends to be things like motor sounds, will suddenly go because it's not playing the whole thing and looping smoothly. It's only playing a fraction of it. And what we think is happening there is that it started to load the file into memory, and then decided before the file is finished loading, I'm going to start playing that file. So you get 80% of the file essentially, or whatever percentage it's managed to load in. So it starts playing and looping that. Now, meanwhile, it's finished loading the file elsewhere in memory. So if you speed up the train and slow back down, you'll find that that file is now playing correctly. So it's a kind of on an on-load thing. The other trick that you can use to try and reset it is, like, for example, go to an external camera and then an internal camera, or fly away from the train and back again, because that causes it to stop playing the file that was playing and reuse the one back from memory again, which is now fine, and that will cure it. Clearly, those are not good solutions. I'm not suggesting they are, but it's helped us kind of understand a bit more of what's going on. There's also another instance with the X Audio system whereby if it happens to be just the wrong sequence of bytes, the whole of the Xbox system audio crashes and you lose all the audio in the game entirely. And the only way you can fix it is to reboot the entire console. And that's just a file that has a bad sequence of bytes in it. It's just bizarre. So talking to a bunch of studios about what their experiences are, they've dumped using X Audio and they use OGG. So we are in the process of making test builds that use the OGG system, with picking one piece of content, cooking everything using OGG system, and so that we can try that. Test 1 is, does it fix the problem? Test 2 is more about memory profiling and performance and so forth. Does the game still run the same? What is its memory? Because we think OGG files are going to end up being bigger than the X Audio files, which are quite slim. Now, what that means is all your memory thing, your problem starts getting a bit bigger again, because audio takes up a fair bit of memory. There's a fair bit of audio, and what we don't want is for that to expand in memory. So we're going to do one, prove it fixes the thing, evaluate it, and sort of go. If it's a few extra bytes, it doesn't matter. If it's suddenly you're using another 100, 200 megabytes of memory, no one needs that. Because this applies to Gen 8, it's every Xbox platform this applies to, from the Xbox One up to the Series X. So we're in the process of doing that testing, and then we'll be able to, once we've done that testing, I think that's a good point to come back and give you an update and say, good news, that did fix the problem, here's the outputs of it, and here's what we're doing about it, and maybe even do a stream running the Xbox using that test build so that you can hear it for yourself. But we'll more as and when we're able to do that. But that's kind of where we're at.
It sounds like a similar process to the save game conversation that we were having beforehand. You try and create a small prototype which might suit one route, you test it, and then you work out if that is something that then we can bring on to other pieces of content as well based on the results of that. So it's very much a small thing, then we test it, then we make it bigger, then we test that, then we make it bigger still, we test that, and then we test again.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's quite a bit to be done. Strange clicking sound coming from somewhere.
Hope it's not a ticking sound, because you might want to get out of your garage, Matt.
I'm not in my garage. I'm in the office.
Even worse.
Even worse. Yeah. So yeah, it is. It's we've had a first cut of the build, so it's kind of like we are down the path of doing this, isn't it? But I've not actually heard the build myself yet, so I'm just waiting to get a build I can run myself. So I'm excited to see what it is, because I'm a big Xbox player myself. So as a number of you will know, I am as excited as everybody else to try and get that resolved.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks for the update on that one. We've got one more thing that I want to talk about on the roadmap today, and it's going to be quite brief, and then we'll move into sort of a community discussion point for this month. This week, the final thing is around the red light issues. We've seen a few comments in the chat actually about the red light issues. Obviously, we're aware that it's a challenge, and there've been quite a lot of reports of various different routes being impacted in varying degrees by red light issues, and whether it's because of AI traffic, whether it's because of save game challenges, whether it's because of other sort of factors that we haven't quite accounted for yet. There are a few routes that are impacted. I think probably the worst that we've seen are probably London commuter, Navverker Dresden, Navverkehr, I think is German pronunciation. Yay, I finally got it in tonight. Bingo card ticked. And more recently Harlem, which we know there are a few challenges with that as well. So we've opened up, essentially we are working through some of those, and there was a partial fix to Harlem a couple of weeks ago, which we hoped would improve more of the services, but there were, I think, 2 or 3 that it positively impacted, and the rest remained as they were beforehand. So we're going back and taking a look at what we can do with those. On the other issues side of things, we want to try and gather information from you. There are a lot of services and a lot of scenarios that might potentially be impacted on new but also older content that at the moment we may or may not be aware of. So I've set up a forum thread. If you are experiencing any of the challenges on there, then go onto that forum thread. I'll see if I can find it and I'll link it in the chat, just so that we know where we're looking, because in some of the instances there are hundreds of playable services that we will not be able to go through each one individually and work out what the precise point is that the challenge is happening. So we ask for your help in this one, and we appreciate, again, not really an ideal situation, but this will help to pinpoint where these issues are and if there are any patterns. If there's anything that stands out about them that the QA team can then identify and say, well, actually, that if we were to solve that and then replicate it out over all of these different routes, it might solve quite a few problems. Because at the moment, it's pretty much playing whack-a-mole. We try and solve problem by problem by problem by problem, and that's obviously not a hugely efficient way of being able to do it. So, yeah, this is kind of a call to arms, really. If you've had any problems with it, we'd love to see which places you are having problems, so we can then sort of pinpoint those issues and we can direct the QA team. We can give them a bit of a head start, essentially, so they can then carry on doing the work that we've talked about throughout the course of this live stream so far, but also perhaps try out some of these and make sure that they are working or not working as intended, and then we can then put it through the development team, who are then going to take a look at fixes, whether they are individual service by service.
These give us good test cases that we can go against, and as you say, help us with finding patterns. I mean, we're expecting actually the a good chunk of the red light issues to be solved in the core dispatcher. And where it will be 1 or 2 more fixes will hopefully resolve a good chunk of the issues. But the more test cases, the more broad test cases we've got, the more thoroughly we can test that in cases that are directly affecting you. So yeah, your help there is very much appreciated.
Yeah,
it's something that we've been doing on the preservation crew as well. Any routes that we're currently prepping for release or got in the queue, then I'm monitoring the forums if people mention stuff. So for example, I've been playing a lot of services on Great Western where people have mentioned that they get red light issues, and I've been testing them against the new version, and so far I've not been able to replicate any of the red signals that have been reported for GWE. So yeah, keep mentioning where you're finding it. If you're doing a service, it would be good to know the time of year, the date, the weather conditions, aspects like that. Also, it's absolutely critical noting which hardware you're on. But yeah, as much information as possible so that we can replicate it here. As Matt has mentioned, we do need to work on them on a case-by-case basis because we don't always know why it might be occurring. So we do look at every single one.
Cool. Yeah, and I've set up a form so that people can submit that information to us as with as much detail as they can do. And again, there are a few comments in the chat about the community doing the work again. Okay, fine. I completely agree. This is a voluntary thing. In an ideal world, we wouldn't ask for this. There wouldn't be a problem in the first place. But we're in this position. We really appreciate any help that you are able to put together for us. And as I say, it's completely voluntary. If you don't want to help us, that's fine. This is just will help some of the challenges that we know people are having and help us direct.
The goal is to get to a fix in one go.
Yeah.
Just get this problem gone.
Yeah, I did see someone mention actually a particular issue on Great Western Express, the down the line scenario. I did find and fix the issues with the services out of that. This is the scenario where you have the choice of 3 different trains at the start. I do have a confirmed fix for that in the Great Western Express update.
Yep. Okay. I'm just updating the form live so that we can include that information. This is exciting stuff, everybody. Thanks very much to everybody who has already submitted. We do appreciate the information that you provide us with. And we have been logging all of these throughout. It's just the ones that we haven't been able to catch yet. Or that we haven't noted on the forums that have perhaps happened over a weekend, and when we've come back we've missed them. These are just to try and make sure that we're covering as much ground as we can. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of the kind of discussion points for this week. There was one more thing that I wanted to mention, which was the logos for Creators Club. So the real life decals. We've got a list of the current licenses that have allowed us to put logos within the game, and we have those logos to hand. We want to try and get that in for as soon as we can. I'm not going to give you the list right now. You can see it on the roadmap article, but those are not an exhaustive list. So we're constantly working with licensors to be able to then allow us to be able to put things like logos in game, allow access to Creators Club for various different logos or intellectual property that they have. So watch this space. This is by no means a final list, and we'll look to include things as we get them. Okay, that brings us to the end of kind of today's roadmap discussion. But I wanted to just ask, whilst I've got you two on a stream, I wanted to just have one kind of final big topic discussion. And I try and take these from the forums, seeing articles and discussions that are going on over the course of the month, and we try and pick out something that's particularly kind of piqued our interest, and we wanted to try and give a little bit more information and context for. This week it's about route extensions, route merging, modular routes, which are 3 very different things, but we wanted to try and provide a little bit more information because they all kind of encompass the same idea. It is being able to either enhance your experience by building on something that's already there, or connecting it to something that's already there. So Matt, I'll come to you first. How would you define first of all an extension, then merging a route, and then having what we're calling a modular route?
I think I'm going to simplify it down to just extensions and modular, because it ends up being just people. I've seen people using the words somewhat interchangeably, but so for extensions, what we refer to by extensions is taking an existing route, copying it, and then adding to it. Yeah. So for example, if you took Paddington Reading Great Western Express, copied it into, Great Western Express 2. This is not a hint. Please don't take it that way. And then you were to then extend it to say, I don't know, Oxford or Swindon or something like that. Then that would be what I would call an extension. It becomes a new thing that's got the existing content plus all of the new content. So that would be what I call an extension, so that it becomes a new release essentially. Then modular is actually where things get really clever, because Extensions work great when you do them once. They start getting a bit weird when you start doing them 3-4 times and so forth. Whereas modular, imagine you made Paddington to Reading as one route. Funny, we could do that, haven't we? We've done that when we had them. And then you could make Reading to say Swindon as a second route. Now, you could, if you bought Reading to Swindon as a route, and you could drive it, that would be great, a standalone route. Or you could buy the other one; it'd be a standalone route. And then if you bought both of them, clicked together, and that made a third route essentially, which then you could drive from one route to the other. And then you could just keep making routes which stand alone if you only want them. Or maybe you'd get Reading to Swindon and Swindon to Bristol, because you don't want the Paddington bit, you don't want the London bit, you grimy bit, you want the bit in more, in the middle there, going to the West Country. So you could pick the bits that you want, whereas with the extensions approach, you'd always just be creating a bigger and bigger thing, and maybe having to pay for that bigger and bigger thing as well. So the extensions approach is super flexible. But probably definitely the most technically challenging. Route extensions, the technical side of it is kind of, once you've done the copy of the route, it's then just making a bigger route. It's not really anything more technically challenging than we currently do at the moment. Whereas modular routes, you'd have to have a way for these routes to click together, for the signalling to work across the two. But the most challenging bit is gameplay. Do you make a timetable for each combination of routes that can be clicked together, bearing in mind you're looking at about 10 plus weeks worth of work to make a timetable, or that's one timetable, or do you try and have one mega timetable which self-cuts it down to the bit of the route that you've got? Now that sounds awesome, but that's really complicated tech, and that's kind of like what we want to do. If we go down the route of the modular routes, we kind of want to do that, because then you just make one timetable. It will probably take 20 weeks to make that timetable. That's still better than the infinite number of weeks it starts costing or takes time to make the infinite combinations of timetables. But you then can make this timetable, which can then grow and shrink according to the bits that you've got and the combination of content that you've got. So that'd be really, really neat. Now, as at this point in time, we don't really have any plans to do extensions, but that's kind of because we want to think about the tech. We want to think about what's the right time to do that.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what Train Simulator Classic does, for instance, they're kind of at the point of their it's been around for a while, so there are a finite amount of routes and options that we have available to us. One of the things that we were talking about before we went on air, Matt, was variety as well. We wanted to try and enhance the variety of the different types of content within the game, and then once we feel like we've represented a lot of different areas and a lot of different ways of playing, then we can think about these sorts of things. Now, it's not to say that this kind of process wouldn't happen alongside some of this work, but we'd love to get, say, for instance, other US is a big country, for instance.
The US is a big country. There are territories which haven't been looked at. There's the UK. I say one of the things we say is we want to do the variety, and I say that slightly slapping myself in the face, because we've done rather a lot of Southern Electric for all of that variety we've been plotting to do. So we need to fix that. There turns out there's a north of the London. There is north of the London.
What for Gap? What?
I don't know. This is the rumour I've been seeing. Internet tells me this is true, so I'd have to believe it. I looked it up on Wikipedia. There are other places that we can look at, and it feels like we ought to. That needs to be looked at before we do the next Great Western Express, but that's not to say that we're discounting those as things. Actually, we actually think about extensions all the time, and when we're looking at route proposals, extensions do come up in part of the discussion, because you know what, sometimes occasionally you'll think, actually, maybe this is the right time to do that. I imagine that we'd probably do an extension first, and then we would probably look at doing, or maybe one or more extensions. I mean, the Great Western one is a fairly natural one to consider, and I know it's something that a lot of people have asked for. And again, it's something we put thought into. Where would that be if we did that? What would that look like? And so that's been considered. And then that would then, through time, we could get the modular stuff into where we could then do the ultimate. Once you've got the ability to do the modular routes and plug them together, and then you can kind of build anywhere. And if they link together, they link together. And that works really well. So it's there's lots to do.
So we've kind of talked perhaps a little bit about the different types of options that we have available to us. Then what our hypothetical plan of attack might be for doing something like this. From a preserved collection side of things, Adam, is there anything that we need to be thinking about here? Is there anything that we should be kind of flagging right now before any of these conversations move any further forward?
From the experience I've had, certainly working through the Train Simulator Classic franchise as well for the majority of its life, extensions or modular routes or anything of that extent really does need to be planned from the outset. As has been seen by all the updates to the Preserved Collection, and talking of Great Western Express, if you leave it too long to then have that decision and go, okay, I think this would be a good idea to expand this particular route, our practices may have moved on by that point. Our methods may have changed by that point. The functionality may be different, and therefore it can become a problem to take that route and extend it, or to plug a brand new Swindon, section of Swindon to Bath into something that was built 5 years ago. So they may not even be compatible. So this kind of stuff has to be set from the outset. It is not something really that you can come along and think about after the fact. And that is probably proven really well in routes in Trains in Classic, such as Brighton Main Line and Portsmouth Direct, where the maybe not Portsmouth Direct, but the origin of the route is actually somewhere else in the country compared to the route itself, because there was thought, and Danny, with the amazing talents that you have of merging routes in Trains in Classic, was part of that original decision to the ultimate goal was to develop pretty much the entire southeast. So we decided where the middle of Kent or middle of the southeast was, and then ensured that routes in the southeast UK or certainly in that vicinity were all built from the same origin. So that has actually been potentially 10 years in the making that idea was going to come together. So it really is about planning ahead. And not to say that we haven't thought about that, because we knew that when we were going into Train Sim World. But it isn't a case of an afterthought where, okay, yeah, let's go and extend Great Western Express or LGV or any of the German routes, or say adding more areas to Sherman Hill, because in the time between creating that route and where we are, they could have changed quite a bit. And yeah, as I mentioned with the 166, trying to put a brand new system in like the PIS departure boards meant that we had to take the train apart quite significantly. And went over budget on the work that was required to put it back together again. So we do have to consider these all quite very carefully.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the origin point, I know that we learned that the lesson of the origins. I think most of our UK routes are based of an origin around Twyford, which is the origin of the Great Western route. So we're kind of like we have thought of some of this stuff. I don't know if all of our UK routes ended up with that, but certainly a number of them have. So we kind of have been thinking at that level. But I think the other aspect of it that Adam brings up there is quite pertinent as well. Is imagine if you've got Great Western Express, which was the second route we built, as Adam said earlier on, and the first route where we really tried to do the things that Great Western does, and then you bolt in another route off from Reading to Swindon, which is the absolute latest route we've ever built. there's going to be a really jarring change in scenery quality and the way that you build the route and the feel of the route. Now, do you build it to the way the old one works, or do you rebuild the old one to the way that, then you're not building an extension, you're building just a giant route. And these are all things that need to be factored in when we're thinking about extensions.
It's a really interesting discussion. We're going to kind of close it there for the night, but there's probably something that we're going to bring up the conversation in the future, probably slightly further down the line. But it's good to kind of understand what kinds of things we need to be thinking about. And I assume, again, at this point, that it's things that we are already actively thinking about in terms of Adam saying that we need to be quite prepared for something like this, for this to work properly. So, yeah, extensions, modular routes, we're thinking about them, but no current, nothing's in the roadmap. So there we go, bingo card ticked off for the final time tonight, hopefully. Okay, let's call it a day there. I think we've come to the end of the discussion, and there have been plenty of things that we've talked about over the course of the night. If you've come in halfway through, where have you been? Recommend you watch through the whole thing if you haven't. Lots of stuff covered towards the start regarding Steam, Preservation Crew content as well in the first half an hour, so that's really worth a watch. Steam, just top line bits and pieces. We haven't got a release date for you yet, but there is a little teaser on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. It gives you a nice little sense of hopefully what the finished product will end up looking like.
Shall we run the trailer before we finish?
We'll run the trailer when we finish, shall we? We'll do that as a little thing, as a little final thing, shall we? Preservation Crew, again, probably need to watch the section in full detail to be able to get across what kind of Adam has been working on and how it's all going to kind of play out. But yeah, there's lots of highlights and whatever in the actual article itself. Bakerloo Timetable improvements, 600 increase in 600 playable services to be added. I'm just trying to go through my notes. I think everything else is hard to give a top level summary of, if I'm being really honest with you, without going down into the nitty gritty. So we'll leave it for tonight. If you are a Train Simulator Classic fan, we are bringing Workshop Wednesdays back for you tomorrow. Jamie will be on with that, and Sam is currently planning to do a Let's Play on Thursday. We were talking about potentially having, was it Munich Augsburg?
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Potentially on Thursday. That's still to be absolutely confirmed, but if you enjoy watching Sam have his shenanigans on a live stream, then you know where to go on Thursday night. All that leaves for me to say is thank you very much, Adam, for joining us tonight. Pleasure as always. And thank you very much, Matt, as well, for joining us and trying to, in layman's terms, and describe to people like myself how and why we are doing the things that we are doing. Thank you very much, Matt.
No problem at all.
Thanks very much, everybody, for watching at home. Hope you've enjoyed that. And yeah, again, really recommend you read the roadmap. If you haven't already, it's a good read. It's a long read, but it gives you a lot of information about what's currently going on. And we hope that we're going to be back next month with lots and lots of positive updates for you, as well as going into kind of the deep dives of some of the things that are going on that perhaps you would never normally see. So have a lovely evening. And yeah, we'll see you again next time.
Cheers, everyone.